Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Marilyn and I'm very excited about this video, and I'll tell you why. Many of you might not know that I'm a list gal. I make lists of everything. I make lists of travel destinations, of restaurants and said travel destinations, of books, but I'm not a big fan of prize-winning lists. However, there is one list called the Ultimate Lists of All Lists that I am a fan of, and I have made a video or two about this particular list. What I like about this list, it's from lithub. It's called the Ultimate List, the Best Books of 2024, but it is different, and I'll tell you why. Now this, the managing editor of lithub, her name is Emily Temple, and she goes through 69 lists from 39 outlets, and we're talking New York Times, every outlet you can think of. And she writes from the most to the least books that were mentioned. So if a book is mentioned 50 times, in this list it's 39 times, that will be on the top of the list. But what I love about the list is that I can collate this list for myself and pick from a bunch of books that made the list, amount of times that it's been on other lists, if that makes any sense. It will make sense, I promise you. I don't have any of the books. It's not surprising. I have read one book that's on the list, but it's called God of the Woods. I'll just tell you that right now. It did make the list, pretty high up. I liked the book, but I didn't love it, and I talked about it in another video. But all of these books are new for me. So what I did was I picked a favorite 10 books out of the many, many books in the list of lists. Does that make any sense? And I'll have those books over here because I don't have any of them. And I have an honorable mention. So let's get started because I'm really excited. My honorable mention is a book called Margo's Got Money Troubles. It made 5 of the lists. It says about it that it is a bold, laugh out loud, funny, and heartwarming story about one young woman's attempt to navigate adulthood, new motherhood, and her meager bank account in our increasingly online world. Now, the reason I put it as an honorable mention, I like Nick Hornby, and he blurbed it saying it was enormously entertaining and lovable. So I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's by Rufi Thorpe. Rufi, R-U-F-I, Thorpe. Like I said, I'll have it up here. As the child of a Hooters waitress and an ex-pro wrestler, Margo Millay's always known she'd have to make it on her own. So she enrolls at her local junior college, even though she can't imagine how she'll make a living. She's still figuring things out and never planned to have an affair with her English professor. Don't know if that's really called an affair, but anyway. And while the affair is brief, it isn't brief enough to keep her from getting pregnant. Despite everyone's advice, she decides to keep the baby. Now at 20, Margo is alone with an infant, unemployed, and on the verge of eviction. She needs a cash infusion fast. When her estranged father, Jinx, shows up on her doorstep and asks to move in with her, she agrees in exchange for help with childcare. Then Margo begins to form a plan. She'll start an OnlyFans as an experiment. I don't know why I put this as an honorable mention. It's not usually a book that I would tend to gravitate toward, but if it's funny and it's a feel-good book, I'm up for that. So, but let's get to the top 10 of the books that I picked out of the list. So number 10 is a translated fiction book, and it's called Mina's Matchbox by Yoko Ogawa, and Stephen B. Snyder is the translator. So the New York Times says it's a book review, editor's choice, and a Times Best Book of the Year. It also made 5 lists. So it's in the spring of 1972, 12-year-old Tomoko leaves her mother behind in Tokyo and boards a train alone for Ashiya, a coastal town in Japan, to stay with her aunt's family. Tomoko's aunt is an enigma and an outlier in her working-class family, and her magnificent home and handsome foreign husband, the president of a soft drink company, are symbols of that status. The 17 rooms are filled with German-made furnishings. There are sprawling gardens and even an old zoo where the family's pygmy hippopotamus resides. The family is just as beguiling as their mansion. And Tomoko's dignified and devoted aunt, her German great-aunt, and her dashing, charming uncle, who confidently sits as the family patriarch. At the center of the family is Tomoko's cousin, Mina, a precocious, asthmatic girl of 13 who draws Tomoko into an intoxicating world full of secret crushes and elaborate storytelling. So I've gotten to really get into translated Japanese and Korean and other fiction last year. And so I put this on number 10. So number 9 is a book that I'm really excited to read, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's called Didion and Babits by Lil Anolik. So it says Joan Didion revealed at last. Now that's not the reason why I'm so attracted to this book, and I never really heard about it on booktube yet. So it's about Eve Babitz. When I was in the 70s or the 80s, I read a few of Eve Babbitt's books. I think one of them was Eve's Hollywood, and I really enjoyed her writing about Los Angeles area. So let me tell you about it. Eve Babitz died on December 17th, 2021. I didn't know that, and I really felt bad about that. Found in the rack, ruin, and filth of her apartment, that too kind of shocked me. A stack of boxes packed by her mother's decades before, by her mother. The boxes were pristine, the seals of duct tape unbroken. Inside, a lost world. The world turned for a certain number of years in the late 60s and early 70s, and centered on a 2-story rental in a down and out section of Hollywood, 7406 Franklin Avenue, a combination salon hotbed living, and where writers and artists mix with movie stars, rock and rollers, and drug trash. And that same avenue was the making of one great American author, Joan Didion, a mystery behind her dark glasses and cool expression, an enigma inside her storied marriage to John Gregory Dunn, their union as tortured as it was enduring. And 7406 Franklin Avenue was the breaking and then the remaking, and thus the true making of another great American writer, Eve Babitz, goddaughter of Igor Stravinsky, nude of Marcel Duchamp, consort of Jim Morrison, among many, many others, a woman who turned so hot she finally almost burned herself alive. Didion and Babitz formed a complicated alliance, a friendship that went bad. Amity turned to enmity. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So Didion, in spite of her conversational style, is so little known or understood until now. So it says, with deftness and skill, the journalist Lili Anolik uses Babitz's brilliance of observation, her incisive intelligence, and also her diary-like letters found in those sealed boxes. Letters so intimate you don't read them so much as breathe them, as the key to unlocking Didion. So if you like Joan Didion or Eve Babitz, or want to find out more, this sounds like a fascinating read, and I definitely, even though it was not known to me, I definitely am going to read this. Okay, so what's number 8? Number 8 is was on 7 lists as well, and it's a romance, which I don't usually read, but I was attracted to this book because I saw it on another booktuber's channel, and it's called Funny Story by Emily Henry. By the way, I'll have Didion and Babits book over here too. But for now, this is Funny Story. And Daphne always loved the way her fiancé, Peter, told their story, how they met on a blustery day, fell in love over an errant hat, and moved back to his lakeside hometown to begin their life together. He really was good at telling it, right up into the moment he realized he was actually in love with his childhood best friend, Petra. And what I remember from the other booktuber and two booktubers who were talking about this book said that it wasn't exactly an enemies to lovers story. It's sort of a unknown person to lovers story. And I'm not very knowledgeable about the romance genre, but this sounded quite interesting, and that it made the list of all lists. Now, remember, this wasn't the only one that made 7 lists. I picked out books that I was interested in and had them ranked in how many lists that they made. All right, so what's number 7? Number 7 I had never heard of, and it made 9 lists. It's called The Wide, Wide Sea, Imperial Ambition, First Contact, and the Fateful Final Voyage of Captain James Cook. It made 9 lists. It'll be over here. And Hampton Sides is the author. So I'm pretty sure people know that already, that I live in Hawaii for like 45 years. And Captain Cook is very well known here. So I was immediately, especially the author, The Wide, Wide Sea, that piqued my attention. So let me tell you a little bit about what it's about. In July 12, 1776, Captain James Cook, already lionized as the greatest explorer in British history, set off on his 3rd voyage in his ship, the HMS Resolution. 2.5 years later, on a beach on the island of Hawaii, which is, when they say the island of Hawaii, this is one of the chain of islands. It's not the island that I am, but it's actually called Hawaii, and where the volcano is, by the way. And he was killed in a conflict with native Hawaiians. How did Cook, who was unique among captains for his respect for indigenous peoples and cultures, come to that fatal moment? And so, yeah, I'm interested in reading about that, because I already knew that he was killed by indigenous people here. I just didn't know the whole story. Okay, so number 6. I'm going from 10 to 1, by the way. I had never heard of this book either. It's called Small Rain by Garth Greenwell. It made 10 lists. A medical crisis brings one man close to death and to love, art, and beauty in a profound and luminous novel by award-winning author Garth Greenwell. And I just wanted to say, before I go into this book, that there's nonfiction and fiction books on these list of all lists. So I think maybe only I have 2 or out of my list. Okay, so a poet's life is turned inside out by a sudden wrenching pain. The pain brings him to his knees and eventually to the ICU. Confined to bed, plunged into the dysfunctional American healthcare system, he struggles to understand what is happening to his body as someone who has lived for many years in his mind. And that really piqued my interest. The American health care system, which I've had some experience with as I get older, and also a poet. My son is a poet. I've dipped into poetry in my life, and I know what it means to live inside your head a lot. So I was attracted to this book that made 10 lists. So if you read Small Rain or heard of it, let me know down in the comments, because I am excited about some of these books. Now, number 5 is a book that I've heard quite a lot, a lot on booktube, and I was already thinking of getting it. And it's called The Safekeep by I hope I say this right, Yael van der Wouden. It made 11 lists, and it's 1961, and the rural Dutch province of, I'm gonna kill this word, Overijssel is quiet. Bomb craters have been filled, buildings reconstructed, and the war is truly over. Living alone in her late mother's country home, Isabel knows her life as it should be, led by routine and discipline. But all is upended when her brother Louis brings his graceless new girlfriend, Eva, leaving her at Isabel's doorstep as a guest to stay for the season. And I think a lot of you have heard about this, that she's like Isabel's opposite. She sleeps late, walks loudly through the house, and touches things she shouldn't. And Isabel develops a fury-fueled obsession. And if I tell you any more, because they did have more, I think it would be a spoilery. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And yeah, I think it's interesting. So I know I've heard this before on BookTube. So if you've read it, also leave me a comment and let me know if I should put this on the top of the list or the bottom. Number 4, I was a little bit hesitant about picking because I haven't read anything by Salman Rushdie, but I did not like all the other books that made 13 lists. So this was the closest. It's Knife, Meditations on an Attempted Murder. On the morning of August 12, 2022, so this is a nonfiction. It's another nonfiction. Salman Rushdie was standing on stage at the Chautauqua Institution, preparing to give a lecture on the importance of keeping writers safe from harm. Yeah, when a man in black clothes, black mask, rushed down the aisle toward him wielding a knife. His first thought, so it's you. Here you are. What happened was a horrific act of violence that shook the literary world and beyond. Now, for the first time and in unforgettable detail, Rushdie relives the traumatic events of that day and the aftermath, as well as his journey toward physical recovery and the healing that was made possible by the love and support of his wife, Eliza, his family, his army of doctors and physical therapists, and the community of readers worldwide. So, of course, I know Salman Rushdie. I think one of his books was Midnight Children, and there's so many, and I will get to, I might want to read one of his books first before I read Knife, but I had to put this on as number 4 because it made the 13 lists, and it was the only book that I wanted to read in that section. Well, we're up to number 3 already. Number 3 made 12 lists. It's Long Island, and I know this is been around BookTube a lot. I think that the author Colm Toibin, and I'm probably saying his name wrong too, he's an Irish author, wrote another book called Brooklyn that I haven't read yet. It's a historical fiction. So what is it about? It really attracted me. So even though I didn't pick up Brooklyn, I might pick up this one because it doesn't seem like you need to read one first before the other. So Ellis Lacey is Irish. Did I say I'll have Long Island here? Married to Tony Fiorello, a plumber and one of 4 Italian-American brothers, all of whom live in neighboring houses on a cul-de-sac in Lindenhurst, Long Island, with their wives and children and Tony's parents, a huge extended family. I was attracted to this book because my partner comes from Long Island too, and I had many family members from Long Island. So let me go on. So it's the spring of '76, and Ellis is now 40 with 2 teenage children. Though her ties to the to Ireland remain stronger than those that hold her to her new land and home. She has not returned in decades. One day, when Tony is at work, an Irishman comes to the door asking for Ellis by name. He tells her that his wife is pregnant with Tony's child and that when the baby is born, he will not raise it, but instead deposit it on Ellis's doorstep. It is what Ellis does and what she refuses to do in response to the stunning news that makes Toibin's novel so riveting. That really attracts me. So I definitely will pick this up. Like I said, it's on 12 lists. It's won a lot of prizes, as all of these books have. Number 2, I was a little bit hesitant to put this on my list. It's not usually a book that I would read, but it made a lot of lists. And I'm not sure how many lists it made, but I think it made like 20. Oh, here it is, 21 lists. Semi-famous artist announces her plan to drive cross-country from LA to New York. 30 minutes after leaving her husband and child at home, she spontaneously exits the freeway, checks into a nondescript motel, and immerses herself in an entirely different journey. I'm not going to say too much more about it, except that it's by Miranda July. It's her second novel, and it confirms the brilliance of her unique approach to fiction. With her wry voice, perfect comic timing, unabashed curiosity about human intimacy, and palpable delight in pushing boundaries, All Fours tells the story of one woman's quest for a new kind of freedom. Part absurd entertainment, tender reinvention of the sexual, romantic, and domestic life of a 45-year-old female artist. So I think this would be, if you're a Generation Xer, you might really be attracted to this one. Okay, so we're number 1. I'm sure everyone knows what number 1 is. The author of all of these lists said that it really blew out the competition with 33 lists. And it also won the National Book Award and the Kirkus Award. And it's James by Percival Everett. I won't tell you too much about it. It is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn in the voice of the enslaved Jim. So when he overhears that he is about to be sold to a man in New Orleans, separated from his wife and daughter forever, he decides to hide on nearby Jackson Island until he can formulate a plan. So I haven't read it yet. I definitely plan to read it. But what I do is I tend to read books like this that have won many prizes a little bit later, maybe toward the end of the year. I don't know why I do this, but I tend to do this. So that's the 10 books and also the honorable mention of the list of all lists. Please tell me in the comments if you've read any of these books, if any of these books you think that I should prioritize. I am attracted to a few of them, like the Eve Babitz book, more than I am others. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that book, actually. But I like the sound of all of these books. And this is my kind of best of, because I get to pick. I get to pick out of the best. So thank you so much for watching the best of the best, ultimate 24 best books, 10 best books with an honorable mention. But I'm going to have the whole list down below in the link. I'll link it down below. I'll link it down below. And please subscribe to my channel. I'm also starting my new channel next week, early next week. So if you haven't done so, I'll have that link down below as well. And as always, on this beautiful Hawaiian day, I wish you all aloha.